Welcome to the National Press Club, the world's leading professional organization for journalists. I'm Michael Friedman, the 113th president of the National Press Club. I'm the former general manager of CBS Radio Network, now journalist in residence at University of Maryland Global Campus, and executive producer of the Kalb Report public broadcasting series moderated by Marvin Kalb. We thank you for joining us on this Veterans Day 2020 as we salute all who have worn the uniform of our country and commemorate the 75th anniversary of the end of World War II. Our guest is the Honorable Robert Dole, politician, statesman, World War II veteran, and American hero. Senator Dole, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, Mike, thank you for having me. Great day.
Thank you. Known for his toughness and wit as a legislative leader, Bob Dole represented Kansas in the U.S. House of Representatives from 1961 to 1969 and in the U.S. Senate from 1969 to 1996, serving as Republican leader of the Senate from 1985 to 1996. A strong debater and negotiator, he also excelled at forging bipartisan alliances to enact important legislation. He retired from the Senate in 1996 to accept the Republican nomination for President of the United States. Born in Russell, Kansas, Dole attended the University of Kansas, playing for the basketball and football teams and running track. He joined the U.S. Army and was seriously wounded during World War II, spending years undergoing rehabilitation at a military hospital. Two of his fellow patients, Daniel Inouye of Hawaii and Phil Hart of Michigan, later served with him in the Senate. He was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 1997 and served as national chairman of the World War II Memorial. In 2002, Bob Dole also became a Senate spouse when his wife, Elizabeth Hanford Dole, was elected as a senator from North Carolina. And in 2018, he became only the 8th U.S. senator to receive the Congressional Gold Medal. Senator Dole, once again, welcome back to the National Press Club.
Mike, thank you very much. I'm honored to be here with you.
It may well be impossible for today's generation to comprehend the enormity of World War II and the sacrifices that Americans made both overseas and here on the home front. So as we commemorate Veterans Day 2020, which occurs on the 75th anniversary of the end of World War II, what are some of the thoughts that come into your mind as you reflect on that epic chapter in the history of America and the world?
Well, I with my brother and thousands of others, enlisted in the U.S. Army. Very proud of that. And then we were shipped off to basic training at Camp Barkley, Texas. I remember my mother came down to be sure they were treating us right. I'm not certain anybody appreciated that but us, but we had a wonderful mother. But anyway, my brother ended up in the Southeast, and I ended up in Italy, where I was pretty badly wounded trying to rescue my radio man who had been shot. And he later died, but I made the effort then. And I've since been pretty active. I spent about 4 years in and out of hospitals, and then went on to get a law degree and get into a law firm and marry Elizabeth Hanford, who's the bright star in my life. And she's still going at it strong at 84 with Elizabeth Dole Foundation. But it's been a great life. I don't think I've ever complained much, though I've been unable the past few years to get around on my own. But, we live in a great country, and I was proud to serve my country, along with the people you mentioned. Phil Hart was a dear friend, and he kind of adopted me in the Senate and kind of took care of me when it came to questions I had and all that. And then Dan Inouye and I were in the same hospital in Battle Creek, Michigan, where we became dear friends. So it was quite a trip.
For your service to our nation, you earned 2 Purple Heart medals and 2 Bronze Stars with Valor. You were medically discharged from the Army as a captain in 1947. And I wonder if you could share with us the qualities of discipline and selflessness and leadership that have translated throughout your life.
Well, not only in my life, but the life of thousands of others. And I learned a lot about leadership. I think going back to my parents in Russell, Kansas, and then through grade in high school and a couple of years at University of Kansas, and then at Fort Benning, Georgia, in the Officers Candidate School. And I think the essence of leadership is that you got to know what you're talking about. And if you do, you got to exert yourself at the appropriate time and place. And in that way, you probably get results. That was always my way of doing it in the Army or the Senate or in private life.
You mentioned, and we've talked a couple times now about your relationship with Dan Inouye and Phil Hart. Could you talk about the experience of serving in Congress with fellow veterans of both parties and the lessons there for today's lawmakers?
Yeah, when Danny and I and Phil were in the Senate, I think at that time a majority of the members of the House and the Senate were veterans. And there was sort of a big fraternity. And we all understood each other. We'd learned a lot in the service. We'd learned about discipline and leadership and followership, I guess you could say. And it made things a lot easier for those in the leadership because you had a lot of veterans in both parties who would give you a break now and then. At least that's what I found to be true.
Last year, in October of 2019, you were honorably promoted to the rank of colonel at a ceremony at the World War II Memorial. And I understand that in the 245-year history of the United States Army, it has only honorably promoted 3 former officers. The first was George Washington, who was promoted to General of the Armies, and the other was Lieutenant William Clark of the Lewis and Clark Expedition, who was promoted to captain. This certainly speaks volumes about your love of country, your willingness to sacrifice for America, and how this country thinks about you. Tell us about that event.
Well, my good friend General Milley made all that possible. We had a ceremony at the World War II Memorial, which is dear to my heart. And we had quite a little event that day, as I recall. And the general and his wife have been good friends of ours. And so he was chief and still is the chief, but he promoted me that day to honorary colonel. I don't get paid, but I get the title.
You've made a very personal commitment to the Honor Flight Program, which brings war veterans to Washington, and you've personally greeted thousands of veterans at the World War II Memorial since 2006. Can you talk with us about how a veteran's service shapes the course of his or her life after leaving the military?
Well, the Honor Flights was a great program. Water. And something I did for 14 years. I go down to the World War II Memorial on a Saturday, and other days if honor flights were coming. And I met thousands and thousands of veterans. At that time, mostly World War II. But as time went on, it became Korea and Vietnam, and then even later Iraq and Afghanistan. But I don't know. I think one guy called me Mr. Veteran, and I think maybe in some respects I was it just meant a lot to these guys for us to get together, get our picture taken, lie to each other about what we did in the service, and have a good time.
I'm sure that it meant so much to so many of them to have that opportunity, and I'm sure it was a great honor and will continue to be. Let's talk about the work of that other senator in your home, your wife and your life partner, Senator Elizabeth Dole. You mentioned earlier she's also worked tirelessly on behalf of military caregivers through the Elizabeth Dole Foundation, and we have a question from a friend who is a retired U.S. Army Colonel, Keith Hawk, who asks whether you could share your thoughts about the importance of caregivers for wounded and injured veterans and the role that they play in our lives.
Well, my wife, Elizabeth, was also in the Senate, as you mentioned, but later on, visited me in the hospital at Walter Reed. She saw the need for someone to support the fathers, mothers, spouses, girlfriends, boyfriends, in case there was a wounded lady. So she started off by just taking these people to dinner while I was in Walter Reed. But she kind of felt there was a mission there. So she started working, and now she's in her 10th anniversary and has this multi-million-dollar foundation that takes care of not only, I won't say takes care, but instructs caregivers, whether it be the parents or the spouse or the brother or sister, girlfriend, boyfriend, and so they can then know properly what to do with a wounded veteran. So it's really been a great program, and she's now, as I said, in her 10th year and still going strong at 84. And her mother lived to be 103. So I imagine she'll be going on a long time.
Oh, that's terrific. A lot of our veterans from Iraq and Afghanistan have been diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder, and that has disrupted their ability to function in the civilian world, and those caregivers have been hugely important to them. One of our members, Gil Klein, asked if fighting in Europe and the Pacific was equally traumatic. How did the World War II vets deal with some of those same maladies that we're seeing today? Are there some lessons to be learned, or do we simply know more about today how to treat some of these things?
I think it's the latter. I think we learned a lot in World War II, and we put a lot of what we've learned into practice. Technology has improved greatly, but we still share the basic thing. And being in the service is that you're serving your country, and you should conduct yourself accordingly. Now, I've known some, not many, but some members of the Army who would shoot themselves in the foot or some other place where it wouldn't cause any problem, and they would be shipped home. That's very few. But most people in the service, were proud to represent the United States of America. They risked their lives, and thousands gave their life so that the rest of us would live in freedom. And I remember seeing a body of Tortor Tocco, one of the great skiers of the world, who had been killed in Italy. And just so many things you see that you don't want to see again.
Sure. Do you feel, this is a question from a member of the press club, Sam Litzinger, do you feel the personal qualities that led you to your military service are the same qualities that led you into politics and carried through your career?
Probably. I never really thought much about politics growing up, but I remember when I was at the University of Kansas, uh, our local county attorney in Russell was a Republican, and I'm a Republican. And he said, I'm going to leave this office, and there's nobody in town to take it over. And that's how I got started in politics. Not anything I did, but the fact that they called me, and I got my first little taste then. So, and from then on, it's history. I mean, I served in the legislature. I served in the House of Representatives in Washington, and then 28 years in the Senate. And I had a great ride. I mean, I made so many friends, Democrats and Republicans. And when I was the leader, I reached across the aisle a lot because I believed that most controversies could be settled with a little time and a little compromise. So we got a lot done, and a lot done with Democrats and Republicans. And it's a little different today, but maybe there'll be somebody get back to the old days, as I call it.
Well, there's certainly some wonderful lessons learned in the way you reached across the aisle, and including with people like George Mcgovern and others for some very important programs that helped America.
Well, George Mcgovern was a dear friend, and you know, he didn't have very much success at the polls, but he was a friend of mine, and we worked on food programs, whether it's school lunch or feeding needy children a breakfast or feeding people across the world. It's estimated 20 million. I'm not sure who counted those, but he was just a wonderful guy, and he was the leader. I don't want to make any mistake. And I was his partner. But George he had a heart, and you know, I was happy to join him, even though we had differences in politics. We certainly didn't have any difference in dealing with people that needed help.
It's wonderful. For many of us today, World War II seems to have been one of the relatively few times that nearly the entire nation has been united behind one goal. Talk to us about a common sense of purpose among Americans and how much that means for driving the country forward.
Well, as I look back on it, we knew the enemy. We knew the enemy was powerful, and the enemy thought they were indestructible, but that turned out to be false, thank goodness. And so, with the leadership of President Roosevelt, we forged ahead. And even though young men would, in some cases, gave their lives just to protect freedom in the long sense, but they would do things, and some would earn the Congressional Medal of Honor, which is the highest honor in the world, and others would be killed and wounded. Uh, but those who came back and became citizens proved in many cases to be the leaders in our country for a number of years.
Absolutely. This is a question from a friend and colleague, retired U.S. Army Major General Lloyd Milo Miles. Do you believe the United States should have some form of national service, military, Peace Corps, Vista, AmeriCorps, or other, as a means of teaching the current and future generations about service and love of country?
Well, I do, and it may not be the popular view, but there should be some way to work that into, if they're not going to college after high school, or if they're in college, to work it out where it's not a burden on the student. And it could be a, in case there was another calamity, boy, you'd be miles ahead because you've had a lot of people who had some exposure to what it was all about and some training that could help them in case there was another conflict.
I have on the table next to me here at the Press Club an important part of broadcast news history. It's the microphone that was used by Edward R. Murrow for his World War II CBS radio broadcast from London, and it's on loan to us by the Murrow family, and it's quite special. I wonder if you could talk about the role that our war correspondents played during World War II in keeping Americans informed.
Well, Edwin R. Murrow was one of the leaders. And of course, when we were stateside, we all listened to Edward R. Murrow. And the other one that comes to mind, if I can think of his name, I'll think of it maybe a little later. But they were very important. And I've read a lot of books on Eisenhower and how they would cooperate with General Eisenhower. If they had some information that would make news, and I could say, please don't release that information, they would say, okay, General, or whatever. And they were very, very, very cooperative. They were, of course, pro-American, and they kept the American people informed. And that made it a lot easier for mothers and fathers and sisters and brothers and others to sort of carry on in the U.S.
That's wonderful. And I'm curious, what occupies your time these days? You obviously are still incredibly articulate and wonderful to talk with, and we're enjoying this conversation immensely. How do you spend your time, and what occupies you these days?
Well, a lot of phone calls. I think I've talked to everyone that was in the Senate when I was on the Republican side, and many Democrats over the years. But I call people different, whether not even in politics, just friends I've made along the way. And it takes up some time. I listen to a lot of music. I'm a news hound. I watch all the news programs. Today I'm kind of a sad Republican, but you never know what's going to happen. I keep busy.
Very good. And what are some of your thoughts about our own future as a nation? You were in a leadership role for so many decades. You helped guide our country forward. What are your thoughts as to a good path for this country going forward from here?
Well, I think our president, he's our president, by doing what he did in the military areas, that assured us we're going to be the strongest country military for years and years. And that's going to be a big factor in determining what happens around the world. And we far exceed Russia or China or anyone else as far as military preparedness is concerned. So I don't know. I think we're ready if anything should happen. But having missiles and other things we have in the arsenal sort of gives notice to Russia and China, Iran, other countries that cause this problem, and then North Korea, that we have the military might to take on anyone, and that's important.
Sure. We've all been dealing this entire year with the coronavirus pandemic and other issues. It has shaken, a lot of people's faith. They've been homebound, and it's been a tough year for a lot of people. You've had an incredibly rich, full life, and you've met so many challenges. I'm curious if you could share with us what helps you in the midst of some other people's faith being shaken this year. What has helped you keep your faith? What do you rely on?
Well, I rely some on faith, and it's important to me. I believe God has a plan for all of us, and it's up to God on whatever happens to me. I'm 97, but I still have all my marbles, and that helps. But I think we have a bright future. I think America is the greatest country in the world and will remain so, well, as far as I can see, and of course longer. But I don't think, I'm not sure what we could do to improve. We're in space, we're in the leadership. As the president said, we're going to put a woman on the moon and someone in Mars before long. And we have the strongest military, as I've said, in the world. So we're ready for the future as far as military preparedness. But we have to remain strong in the civil area too. We have to love our country. And there's some people in America who really don't care for our country. My view is they ought to leave. And I'd be happy to get them a passport or whatever. But there are very few, probably count them on your fingers, toes, and somebody else's toes and fingers. But let's let her rip in America. And let's prove to the world that we are the strongest force for peace, not war, for peace. And well, that would be a legacy that live forever.
And the commander of our American Legion Post, which is based here at the National Press Club, American Legion Post 20, Jim Noon, asks if you could share a message for this Veterans Day 2020 to all of America's veterans. What would your message be to them?
Well, I'm a proud Legionnaire, and a member of the VFW. I would just say, be true to your faith, be true to your country, be on the positive side. There are always some people who take the negative side, or going to hell in a handbasket or whatever. But I just believe right now we're in a very, very strong position because of the people in this country who love freedom and who don't want to go to war. And I think we can perpetuate that if we work at it.
Thank you. And our last question comes from former National Press Club president and American Legion Post 20 member Myron Belkind, who is a neighbor in the complex where you live here in Washington.
Oh, really?
Yes, he is. And Lovely man, and one of your neighbors. And he says, as you look back on your 97 years and hopefully many more to come, what advice do you have as a member of the greatest generation for today's younger people in terms of service to their country?
Well, if I had sons getting out of high school or entering college, I'd instill in them the greatness of our country, not brag about everything, but we are a great country. We're a great country because we have moral values and we have other values that keep us going and going. And I don't care what class you're in as far as economics, there are opportunities for everyone, almost everyone. And we're trying to reach those who fail to have an opportunity, make certain everybody has an opportunity to find a job that pays well so they can feed their family. And when we have faults as a nation, no doubt about it, but we're trying to get over those faults and bring everybody into this big family of ours. And hopefully it won't be long before everyone who wants to work will have work at a decent salary or pay, hourly pay. And that'll help us everywhere, because if you can work and feed your family and raise your family as you would have been raised yourself in most cases, we're going to be a strong, strong country.
Well, we're going to allow that to be our last word today. Senator Robert Dole, thank you so much for joining us to help us commemorate Veterans Day 2020. It's an honor to spend time with you.
Well, I may have sort of went off base on your questions, but I didn't mean to. I meant to respond to what your question was. But I get so riled up about our country. I mean, riled up in a positive way. I don't know any country like it, and I've traveled to many countries in my life, and there are many good countries, don't mistake me. But I think they all look to America. Even those who hate us look to America. They understand the people and our military might, and the fact that we want peace through strength. We don't want war. And we're just a great American family. Democrats, Republicans, Independents, don't make any difference. When the chips are down, we're all in the same boat and in the same family.
Thank you. As you know, and as we mentioned, the National Press Club has been home to American Legion Post 20 for more than 100 years, and you are the recipient of the American Legion Distinguished Service Medal, the Legion's highest honor. So it's our honor today to send to you, to your home, our National Press Club American Legion Post coffee mug, and we hope that you will enjoy using that mug in the days and weeks and months and years to come. And we hope that as the fog lifts from this pandemic, that you might be able to join us again in person here at the National Press Club in the near future.
Well, I hope so. And the pandemic's going to end. We're going to have a vaccine soon, very soon, that I believe will start the erosion of the virus. And sometime early next year, I'll probably be able to say, boy, that was a terrible thing, pandemic. But now it's gone or it's leaving. We have a vaccine. America's going to get back to where they were, back to normal. And normal is what we want.
Well, we're with you there. Thank you, sir. We wish you and Mrs. Dole good health, good luck. We hope you'll stay safe. And as we honor our veterans today, let us say thank you for your service to our country.
Thank you, Mike. Good luck.
Thank you, sir. Our thanks also to our producer today, Lindsay Underwood, to our coordinator for today's event, former club president and American Legion Post member Myron Belkind, our headliners, team co-leaders Donna Juan Leger and Lori Russo, and to our wonderful National Press Club team behind the scenes here in the Broadcast Operations Center. We thank our members and guests for joining us today. Be well, stay safe, and have a good day. Senator, thank you so much.